24th of February, I suddenly got an alert on my phone. I slowly watched as Russia invaded Ukraine.
And I find myself one of the last Westerners behind the new Iron Curtain. My name is Charlie Walker. I'm an adventurer and explorer. I'm heading to Siberia in the depths of winter. The only way to get out is to get to the end of my hike. Everything is being gone over. What could be used against me? What here could be a problem? I'm pushed into this cell, the door shuts, and that's it, I'm there. That first night is one of the most frightening moments of my life. I could be here for weeks, I could be here for months. How long will I be there?
Just about 300 meters in.
I'm going to hike 600 miles along the surface of the frozen Yana River in the Arctic northeast of Siberia.
It's a beautiful day, crisp, not that cold. Feeling pretty excited to be getting going at last.
Suddenly, my phone buzzes. Russia has begun an invasion of Ukraine, a full-scale invasion, land, sea, air, missiles striking across the country.
Ratified by the Russian parliament on February 22nd, I decided to conduct a special military operation.
There's potentially a few days where I can still get myself to the airport, get on a plane and get out of Russia safely. But on the other hand, I find myself, by chance, one of the last Westerners behind the new Iron Curtain. So curiosity gets the better of me and I decide to stay. So I would have a week sort of, out in the wild in my tent and then be welcomed into a community. This part of Russia is really cut off from, not just from the world, but from the rest of Russia. There's very limited internet access in these villages. Their only real access to information is via TV and radio, which are now by this point entirely controlled by the Kremlin. So they are arguably the most prone to propaganda, to disinformation, more so than anyone else in Russia. In one village, I meet this guy who speaks very good English. Over the course of a long conversation, he seems to slowly sort of loosen up or open up to the idea that perhaps what he sees in the news and on the radio is not entirely honest or accurate. Suddenly his phone rings and he picks it up and his expression changes, his body stiffens. And on the other end of the phone is someone, an officer from the FSB, formerly known as the KGB. The Soviet blinds of taciturnity clamped down, and that was it. By the next day, he's been plumbing the depths of a dictionary of English idiom that he has. And he sort of looks up and he says, "Charlie, I've had a long night of the soul, and I've been chewing the cud, and I've realized that you're wrong. The president is a good man doing the right thing for the good of Russian people and for the world, and you need to leave now." He was terrified that people would find out what we'd been talking about, or find out what he had said, or perhaps even find out what he had thought in the secret recesses of his mind. The conversations I have with people stay with me as I continue walking along the river.
I just feel heartbroken for this guy.
It had taken an incredibly short amount of time after the invasion of Ukraine for that old Cold War or Soviet-era sense of paranoia to just kind of rush back into society. And that starts to play on me as well.
Well, I've just left the Yana River.
There it is, down there. And I am in the ghost town of Siberia. The place definitely needs to be updated if anyone's going to live here.
It is Friday.
Saturday,
Minus 32.
on my thermometer. They took me through to the back of the building. Came back, military uniform. The lies that Russian state media has put out. Foreigner from a enemy state.
About halfway along my hike, I reach a small, nearly abandoned town. The village administrative head shows me on his phone a picture of my passport that's been taken in another village. People know where I am. The FSB become increasingly inescapable as far as I'm concerned. One night, I'm camping, and I received this message from my partner telling me that there has been a Russian retreat in parts of Ukraine, and in the wake of their retreat, there have been various massacres uncovered or discovered, 400 dead in one town. And the message is essentially saying, be careful, things are changing, the situation is moving quickly. And this is the point where I start to feel not just uncomfortable being in Russia still at this time, but certain that I shouldn't be. The only way to get out is to get to the end of my hike, and then the first plane I can out of the country. So when I arrive in Tiksi, the port town, my finish line, relieved, frightened, there's a knock at the door of the apartment I've managed to rent. And I'd fallen asleep while reading the first few chapters of The Trial by Franz Kafka. Ironically, in which a man wakes up to the police telling him he's under arrest, and he doesn't know what for.
You're under arrest?
You're making a formal charge?
Oh, I couldn't do that, mister.
And I answer the door to find two policemen standing there. And they say, can you come down to the station for registration? Within an hour, I know that this is more serious. And they eventually tell me, yeah, you're under arrest. You've been conducting journalism, violating the terms of your visa. But you've also been asking provocative questions about the special military operation. And a court is convened. By this point, it's 9:30 p.m. The judge sweeps in his black robes, looking quite angry to have been sort of roused from his home at this time of night in the winter. I'm made to understand that added to the accusation of journalism and of asking provocative questions is worryingly photographing restricted military sites. They haven't looked at my phone, they haven't looked at my camera, they haven't bothered to even pretend to look for or come up with evidence for this. But of course it doesn't matter. And as with 399 in 400 Russian court cases, I'm not acquitted, I'm found guilty. We drive into this compound. There are two perimeter walls topped with huge coils of razor wire. It's every bit the sort of intimidating picture you might get for a sort of small remote prison outpost. I'm pushed into this cell, the door shuts, and that's it. That first night in this cell is truly one of the lowest, one of the most frightening moments of my life. The things they've accused me of, which would come under a new law they introduced at the start of the war, spreading fake news, with a sentence of up to 15 years. So it seems not just plausible, but actually perhaps likely that this could really get very serious very quickly. After one long week in the cell, I'm led down this corridor, and suddenly I'm pushed into a chair, and the camera is already rolling. I can see this red dot through the glare of the lights that they have.
Журналист-фрилансер Чарльз Уолкер оказался здесь за повторное административное правонарушение.
And they immediately start asking me, why were you doing this? Why were you photographing military sites? Why are you asking provocative questions? And it was terrifying.
I don't really know much about it.
У меня нет по этому поводу мнения, потому что я уже давно в России.
And there's this sense that potentially I am being interviewed for the news so that the court of public opinion can be prepped for a big trial in front of another kangaroo court to slap me with some sort of multi-year sentence. I'm led back to my cell, locked in, and I'm just thrust back into this daily medley of kind of eternal uncertainty. Push-ups, terror, sit-ups, boredom, sleep, frightened, dips, impatient, gazing out of the window, indignant. I feel totally helpless. Towards the end of the 4th week, there's suddenly a glimmer of hope. There are some other inmates who are due to be deported, and they've decided they're going to do a deportation run. And along with 3 other prisoners, I am flown in cuffs 7 hours to Moscow on a commercial flight. At the back of the plane, in the airport in Moscow, my cuffs are removed, my passport is stamped. I walk through the immigration desk, I get my phone out, I message my partner saying I'm through immigration, I'll get on the flight and it's over. But seconds later, there's a tap on my shoulder and a policeman says, Mr. Walker, this way. I'm in Moscow, I'm in the belly of the beast, the seat of power in Russia. They get hold of my journal and start reading it, which I've managed to keep hidden up to this point. They get hold of my phone. They start going through messages, start going through previous translations on my translation app, emails, photos, absolutely everything. Everything is being gone over. And just when I thought it was all over, I'm sitting there totally helpless, just trying to keep track of everything that's happening and thinking what in that particular thing could be used against me, what here could be a problem. And all the while this clock on the wall is ticking closer and closer to my flight. So among all my belongings that they're searching are, and this doesn't sound good, but are some hidden micro SD cards, memory cards. I was worried that they would wipe my cards with the photos that I've gathered over this journey, the story that I have to tell. These materials that were hidden looked, I suppose one could argue, like espionage. One of these cards hadn't been well hidden, and I just managed to tuck it into the elastic headband of a head torch. But this head torch is now on the table with these officers picking through everything like vultures. At the point where I am convinced I'm not going home, I'm not getting out. Finally, one of these officers gets a call, tells me, pack up. I stuff everything into my bag as quickly as I can, snatch my phone back, and with just 5 minutes to go before my flight, at a run, I am led through the departures lounge at the airport to the gate where the airline staff are waiting for me. The minute the wheels leave the tarmac, I finally, suddenly, for the first time in this whole ordeal, just break down into floods of tears. All the pent-up sort of fear and despair and tension just erupts. Suddenly, everything just hits me at once. I'm in the air, I'm free, it is truly, thankfully, over. I feel really lucky to have got out when I did. Things could have been so easily significantly worse. I had a glimpse down the rabbit hole of Russia's penitential system, and thankfully I didn't topple down into that hole, but I just have some idea of what it's like to look over into that dark and confusing abyss, and I feel incredibly lucky to have stayed outside.